Officers humiliate a veteran in a diner. But then they see this on his table. James Williams, 75 years old, carries the weight of life and war on his face. On this day, he sits alone in the corner of a busy cafe. The coffee in front of him steams gently while outside the world moves on. James wears a worn but clean coat, his cane leaning against the chair. The conversations around him blend into a soft murmur. He keeps glancing at the door. He's waiting for his son. No one in the room knows who this man is or the service he once gave to his country. The door swings open. 2 police officers enter, young, confident, in uniform. Their eyes scan the guests until they land on James. Without greeting or respect, they walk straight up to him. "What are you doing here, old man?" one asks mockingly. James slowly raises his gaze, his eyes calm, his voice composed. "I'm waiting for my son." But his composure only seems to irritate the officers more. "A veteran, huh? Doesn't look like it." They laugh as if it's a joke. The room grows quieter. People start to glance their way, but no one says a word. When James hands them his old veteran ID, one of the officers tosses it carelessly back onto the table. "That's probably fake," the other sneers. To them, James is nothing more than an old, poor man, out of place in a cafe like this. His uniform, his sacrifice, his story, they mean nothing. James takes a deep breath. He's seen worse. But in his heart, something begins to burn. Not anger, but disappointment. Not for himself, but for a country that forgets to honor the ones who gave it freedom. James Williams remains upright, even as everything around him tries to destroy his dignity. The 2 officers push him out of his chair, search him roughly, and sneer at his every move. One of them grabs his cane, an old but treasured item that has accompanied James for decades, and breaks it over his knee. The snap echoes through the cafe, like a blow against something far deeper. Yet James doesn't react. His hands tremble slightly, but his gaze remains steady. He knows that anger would only pour fuel on the fire. The other guests have long fallen silent. Some look away in shame, others stare open-mouthed. But no one steps in. No one says a word. It's the helplessness of those who would rather remain spectators than confront injustice. Encouraged by the silence, the officers reach for handcuffs. "You don't belong here," one hisses. And though James feels pain, both physical and emotional, he does not break. He looks the men straight in the eyes, not defiantly, not angrily, but with the quiet strength of a man who has survived wars and knows that the hardest battles are often fought without weapons. As they drag him toward the door, James speaks with emphasis for the first time. In a calm voice, he says, "What you've done today, you'll never forget, and you'll learn what it means to face a man who refuses to be stripped of his dignity." The words hang in the air, heavy as lead. For a moment, the smug grins of the officers falter into discomfort, but it's too late. The storm they've unleashed is about to fall back upon them. James is just being dragged to the door when he calmly nods toward an inconspicuous card on the table. "Before you go, take a look at that," he says quietly. One of the officers, George, grabs it carelessly, ready to toss it aside as well. But as he reads the inscription, the blood drains from his face, printed in bold letters, "James Williams, father of Police Chief Robert Williams." George blinks, looks again, and then turns pale as chalk. Gilbert, his partner, leans over his shoulder and freezes just the same. Seconds later, the cafe door swings open, and in steps a tall man in a dark coat. The atmosphere shifts immediately. Robert Williams, chief of police and a highly respected man in the city, scans the room until he sees his father. Handcuffed, blood on his coat, and a broken cane at his feet. He pauses for a heartbeat. Then he walks slowly, deliberately, toward James. No words are spoken, just a look full of pain, shame, and love. James lifts his head and meets his son's eyes, calm, without a trace of bitterness. Then Robert turns to the two officers. What the hell did you do?" His voice isn't loud, but it carries the weight of 1,000 commands. George stammers, trying to explain. Gilbert raises his hand, searching for excuses, but it's too late. "It doesn't matter who this man is," Robert says sharply, "but the fact that you think respect must be earned through connections, that alone disqualifies you from wearing a badge." The cafe breathes again. A few people clap softly. And James? He sits back down at his table, quiet, dignified, and finally, no longer alone. Chief Robert Williams stood tall in the center of the cafe, which had suddenly become a silent courtroom. He looked at his father, then at the two officers. "You humiliated a man, not because he was guilty, but because he was old, dressed simply, and didn't fit your image," he said calmly, yet with a voice that allowed no objection. "It doesn't matter that he's my father. No one deserves to be treated like this." With a single command, George and Gilbert were suspended from duty. No protest, no apology could undo what had been done. James Williams slowly relaxed as the handcuffs were removed. He nodded to his son, not out of gratitude, but pride. Not because Robert had saved him, but because he had stood with integrity. Father and son faced each other in a moment of deep, silent connection. There was no resentment between them, no blame, only the unspoken truth that dignity doesn't need to shout to be powerful. As they finally walked out of the cafe together, the weight of humiliation gave way to quiet dignity. People stepped aside, some nodding with respect. James held onto his son's arm, not from weakness, but as a sign that true strength sometimes lies in simply surviving. And Robert knew he had given his father more than justice. He had shown the whole city what true honor looks like. Sometimes true greatness doesn't come in moments of shouting, but in the silence that follows. James Williams, a humble veteran, preserved his dignity even when others tried to take everything from him. His pride, his respect, his humanity. What the world failed to see revealed itself in a single glance, a single gesture, the son who came. This story reminds us that courage isn't always loud, and true heroes are often the ones no one sees. James needed no weapon, no title, only character. And Robert proved that justice is strongest when it speaks from the heart. It's not about who someone is, but how we treat them. Every person deserves respect. Always. A single quiet moment can be louder than any verdict. What if James had never revealed who he was by chance? What do you think? Do people only deserve respect if they're important? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched you, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with those who must never forget what respect truly means. And remember, true strength is often silent. Justice begins with courage.